Welcome back. You're with Afternoon Agenda. We are continuing to bring you more reaction and analysis of the Coalition's nuclear proposal as outlined by the Opposition Leader Peter Dutton yesterday. Joining me here in the Perth studio live now is the Labor MP Josh Wilson. Good to see you. Thanks for coming in. Our Canberra reporter a bit earlier in the program took us through a long list of criticism we've already heard from your side. We know that there are no costings from Peter Dutton. We know there's been a lack of consultation with the communities involved and also with the owners of the proposed sites. What I'm keen to ask you about is your view more generally on nuclear power as a concept. Do you think in 2024 there is any need to really have a ban on nuclear?
Well, I mean, coming to the opposition's proposal, I think calling it a proposal is generous. Nobody's calling it a policy because that would be ridiculous. I think the best term for it would be a scam. And it's a bit like you get an email from a Nigerian prince who says, if you give me your bank account details, I'll make you rich. And in the end, really, they're going to take you to the cleaners. And that's what would happen. I mean, if Peter Dutton was able to force Australia down the path of nuclear energy generation, the cost would be enormous. It would be a cost that would resonate down the generations. It would be both a direct cost to households and it would be a cost to the extent that it would stop a future Australian government from having the capacity to invest in schools and hospitals and aged care and pensions. I don't have a problem with nuclear technology in the way that I might not like certain flavours of ice cream. I mean, nuclear technology for power generation is the most expensive option, and it's also the slowest option. It's also the most inflexible option. It's not commercial, it's uninsurable. I mean, it literally has nothing going for it. And so the ban that was put in place by John Howard all of those years ago was out of recognition that when you can clearly see that there's something that has no benefits for you, you don't waste time and resources by keeping it on the table. I mean, Angus Taylor this morning talked about having horses in a race. I mean, if you're going to have a horse race, presumably your interest is in the horse that might be competitive and potentially the horse that might win. Why on earth would you go and find a horse and pay the most money for the slowest, oldest, most useless horse? It's just completely illogical.
What is unique about WA's grid that makes nuclear something that experts haven't been pushing for, particularly in this state?
Well, I mean, WA is similar to the rest of Australia. I mean, if you're looking at a bunch of comparative options, you wouldn't choose the slowest and most expensive option, and that's just as true for WA as for anywhere else. The interesting question for the Coalition, and particularly for Liberal members over here, is around whether they're going to inflict that on Collie. In the last 24 hours, it hasn't really been clear. There's some Coalition members have been saying, well, we'll only get these nuclear reactors built by a foreign country in 15 years' time here if the particular community is interested in that. But there's been a suggestion by others that while they'll go through the charade of listening to people, in the end they're going to deliver them anyway. And that point I made before, I mean, people should remember, I think Ted O'Brien this morning was saying, well, we don't have the detail about how we might get these reactors. That's a lie. I mean, there's only 3 countries in the world that build nuclear reactors for other people, and that's Russia, Korea and France. So I don't think it's going to be Russia. So it'll either be Korea or France. France renationalised its nuclear constructor last year because it was on the brink of bankruptcy. And the Korean constructor, KEPCO, recorded a record $25 billion loss in the previous year. They're the only 2 options that exist, and both of those entities are in themselves uncommercial.
You're one of the few Labor MPs who have raised concerns about the AUKUS nuclear-powered submarines. They'll be stationed and embraced really by Western Australia, very close to your own electorate of Fremantle. How worried are you about the nuclear waste storage issue related to the AUKUS program?
Well, the first part that's being dealt with at the moment deals with low-level radioactive waste. Low-level radioactive waste is stored in a number of medical facilities around Australia because it's a byproduct of nuclear medicine. And nuclear medicine is an incredibly important part of our health system. It goes back to what I was saying before. I mean, the idea that the opposition tried to suggest is that people's attitude to nuclear is like a flavour of ice cream is completely wrong. Nuclear technology has its place. It has a really significant place in our health system, and we manage low-level nuclear waste, and that's what's being talked about at the moment. We have the capacity to do that.
So you're not worried at all about the nuclear-powered submarines being based so close to you in WA?
Well, I mean, as you acknowledge, I've expressed my concerns about the acquisition of nuclear-propelled submarines. Some of those concerns, or the extent to which I'm not convinced that's the best option for Australia, are related to the nuclear propulsion part, but some of those concerns are related to other aspects of it. I think it is healthy that we have an open and searching conversation about an acquisition project like that. I'm a backbencher, I'm a parliamentarian who's sought to be part of that conversation. I think that's a healthy thing, and it's certainly something that we've seen a lot more of under the Labor government than we did under the Morrison government.
Just finally, you haven't mentioned three-headed fish or two-headed blinky bills like some of your colleagues have. They've been tweeting pictures online talking about the nuclear debate. Is that a bit immature to lift the tone of the debate and actually have a serious conversation about this?
Well, look, debates take all kinds of colours, shapes and forms. It's very hard when you have a sort of a scam proposition that's been put forward, a cartoonish, ridiculous, absurd stunt, a one-page press release that says we're going to have 7 nuclear reactors in Australia. It's very hard to not respond to that with a bit of Australian good humour. But it is deadly serious. I mean, as I said before, if for some reason Peter Dutton was able to inflict that future on us all, the costs would be absolutely enormous. And I guess I'd leave you with the final point. Because we don't talk about nuclear as a genuine prospect here in Australia for all of the good reasons, we perhaps are capable of being gulled into believing that nuclear is actually happening elsewhere. I mean, nuclear is in decline worldwide. It peaked as a proportion of global energy in 1996. Last year, nuclear energy in France was at the level that it had previously been in 1990. It was a 25-year low in the US. We had 440 gigawatts of renewables added to the global grid last year. We saw a decline of 1 gigawatt of nuclear last year. It is a 70-year-old technology that is in decline. The idea that we'd want to go down that path in Australia is just bananas.
Josh Wilson, really appreciate you joining us for your views on what is such a controversial issue at the moment and will be all the way to the next election. Thanks for your time.